I know you've been working hard on your assignments. So it's part 2 of lesson 6. We've enabled basic authentication in our video game store. We did a lot of this work. We kind of did the heavy lifting by checking individual user accounts when we set up our project. And Visual Studio was kind enough to give us a series of dependencies to the identity and identity entity framework library. It configured our application. It configured our database with all the tables we needed. It configured sign up. We've made a few small changes in startup.cs that we don't want to require account confirmations, and we want to also add role management. And then we've made just 3 very small coding changes, 2 in our categories controller. We've set authorize on the controller at the class level. We've overridden this with allow anonymous at the details level. And then in our layout file, we've added 2 new links. But rather than make these links public, we've controlled access so the links are only visible to authenticated users. Now, we should also do something, make a couple of changes in our product controller. What do you think we should do in the product controller that would make sense? As an anonymous user, I can't see the product's links. Yeah, we definitely don't want anybody to delete. Absolutely, Ivan. So I'm anonymous. I can't see the product's link because it's hidden. However, I could still go to the URL and I still have full access, not only to delete, but I could add products. I could change the price. I'm sure Liam would be really happy if he could go in here without logging in and set his favorite game price down to 1 penny, for example. So what should we do in the product controller specifically to prevent this? Yes, I know Liam would like it. But if we own the Get Me a Game store, and we don't want Liam to get Dark Souls for 1 cent, what code changes do we need to make in the product controller? No matter how nicely Liam asks. Yeah, that's right. Let's add that authorized decorator like we added onto the categories controller. Let's add this as well to the product controller. So I will add authorize up here as well. It wants me to add a reference as well here to Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.authorization. So I'm going to accept that reference. It'll add a reference up above. So I'll just accept that option. It adds a new reference onto line 12. So now our products controller should also be private. Okay, so we've added line 16, and I used my code hint to add line 12. And if I refresh now, I should get bounced to the login screen. So I'll try again my products index view as an anonymous user. And now I've been locked out, as I should be. So we've implemented authentication, but now we want to go to that next level and we want to implement authorization. We want to create a couple of roles in the database, and we want to create a couple of accounts that are in different roles. and those users should be able to see or do different things. So I've put a little script on Blackboard, first of all, that I'm going to copy and paste into my database. If I go to my lesson 6 folder, there's a script here I want to run. So I'm going to copy these two lines that say insert into Asp Net roles. I'm going to create two roles in the database. I'm going to create an administrator role and a customer role. An administrator will be ID 1. These IDs in this table are not auto-generated. We manually specify them. And an ID 2. So I'm going to copy those two lines. I'll also put them in the chat if that's easier for you. And I'm going to go to my database in Management Studio. So I'll give you a minute to connect to your database if you need to. I'll close right out of mine and go through the process again of connecting, because I want to execute those two insert statements to add administrator and customer roles into the ASP.NET roles table. So I'll open up Management Studio or Azure Data Studio if you're on Mac. I want to connect to my server. So whichever server you're using, if you're connecting to Azure, you should just be able to find your Azure server in the dropdown. And your credentials, if you saved them previously, the credentials will automatically be populated for you. I don't have to enter my username and password. If you're connecting locally, then your local server should be here, and you probably can just use Windows authentication locally. So I'm going to connect to Azure. And I'll open up my database. And then I'm just going to click the New Query button here on the toolbar. Or I could right-click my database name and choose New Query here. Both of them work. And then I'll just paste in those two lines. And to run these, I can click the Execute button on my toolbar, and this is going to add administrator and customer roles to the database. So I'll click Execute. And Management Studio tells me each insert executed. Now, if I want to check it, if I right-click my ASP.NET roles table, I can choose Select Top 1000 Rows, and this should run a query that shows me what's in the table. So now I've got two roles, administrator and customer. So now what we want to do is we want to create some new accounts. We're going to manually create an admin account. We're going to create an admin account, and then we're going to put that user in the admin role. Then we're going to change our register page that comes with ASP.NET Identity. I'm going to want to change this page so anybody else who registers will automatically get added to our site as a customer. So people can't register themselves as administrators and then start making changes to the product catalog. So the first thing I'm going to do now, once I have my roles, I actually want to delete that customer one account we created because that user isn't in any role. Because this user that we have in our Asp Net Users table, we created it before we had any roles in the database. So this user has a login, but they're not actually put in a role. So I'll delete this account, create an administrator, and then we'll create a customer. And then we'll change some of the security rules in the website. Because the way we've done it right now with authentication only, anybody can sign up and log in and then change our categories or change our products. We don't want that. Only administrators should be allowed to change the categories or change the products. So the next thing I'm going to do here, once I've run these two inserts, is I will just delete from Asp Net Users. So I'm going to delete that customer one account. I don't want to run my inserts again, so I'm just going to highlight this one command and execute delete from Asp Net Users. And I'll put this in the chat as well. So we now have two roles in the database, but we don't have any logins anymore. There are no users right now. So I'm going to create a new account. And after we create that user, we're going to manually, with an SQL script, we're going to put them in the administrator role. And we'll use that account to manage our product catalog. We'll create a separate customer account that we can use for shopping in the site. So once you've inserted the roles and cleared out your user table, we want to go back to our store. And I want you to click on register so we can create a new account. To make it simple, we'll keep the same password, but this time we'll use admin@gc.ca as the username. I'll put the credentials here. Easiest if we all have the same credential, because we're going to need this each week now to make changes to the website in the product catalog, and this way you won't forget your password. We'll all just set up the same password. 123, sorry, $. I'll put it in the chat here. Okay, so now I'm logged in as admin. So we have this user account, but we need to manually assign this user to the admin role. So again, we can run one more SQL command that will take this admin user and make them an administrator. That line of code is on Blackboard as well. So you can grab it from Blackboard, or I'll put it in the chat. What we want to do is select anybody that's an Asp Net user. So right now there is only one. This is our admin account. And we're going to put that account into the role of admin, the role of one. So I'm going to copy this line from Blackboard, and I'm going to paste it both into my query window, and I'll paste it into the chat for you, although you also have access to this on Blackboard. So it's in the chat. I'm going to highlight my insert statement. So select all the IDs from Asp Net users. There's only one. And put each of those into Asp Net user roles. So this table is a junction table. It's got a role and it's got a user. So this will tell us which users belong to which roles. So I'm going to run that statement. And then I can check it if I look in Asp Net User roles. We've got, here's my new user ID, and this user is in role ID 1, meaning this person is an administrator. So run that insert statement. That's the only admin account we need. But just to see how this works, we also now need a non-admin account. We want a customer account. So I want to change the register page, add a little bit of code that after we save a new user registration, we also make that user a customer. So people cannot sign themselves up to be administrators. They can only sign themselves up to be customers. So we've got this register page in our website, but if we actually look in our project, we're not going to find it anywhere. You'll notice the URL when I go to the register page. It takes me to identity account register. But if we look in the project, for example, under there's no controller, there's no identity or account controller. If we look in views and shared, we don't actually see any register or login views here. So where the heck are they? It's a little bit confusing. It's there automatically, but we can customize it. So we want to make a change to our register, but we don't need to change the page itself. The UI is okay, but we want to change some of the code here. So after it creates the new account, we also want to take that user and make them a customer, put them in that role. So here's how we do it. It's under this areas section. Notice under areas, we see identity, and under identity, we see pages. Now there's no visible pages here, but we're going to basically open up the kind of pre-built behind the scenes register page and add a little bit of code to stick any new users into the customer role. So here's how we do it. So you can customize these. So for example, maybe you want your register page to be bigger, like you want to ask for first name, last name, phone number. So you can customize it. You could customize the login screen. So here's how we would do that. So under identity pages, I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose add. And again, this may be different for a Mac user, but I think most of the Mac users in the class have opted that they're going to try to move to working on Windows, because I know the Mac is just too different and difficult to keep up. So under areas, identity pages, add, I want this, new scaffolded item. So again, the scaffold is just a fancy word for auto-generated code. Again, I expanded areas, identity, and pages. I right-clicked and I choose add new scaffolded item. And what I want here, if I click on the left under installed, I'm going to click on identity. So I want add code required for using .NET Core identity in the application. So I'm going to, under identity, again, I'll choose identity and add. And we'll pause for a second. Visual Studio is going to bring up a list of all of the templates of all the different pages involved for managing security. So we can select an existing layout page, which we're going to, our shared, and we can pick any one of these pre-built templates to override. So for example, if you wanted two-factor authentication, we could enable that. I just want to override the second last option, the account/register. Liam, doesn't your dog know you're studying? Okay, I'll redo that. No problem. Just cancel out of that. No, that's totally fine. Part of comes with, we're working from home. We have interruptions. It happens. So we're going to expand the areas folder. So this folder is here because we picked security. In my project with no security that I created today, notice the areas folder, it doesn't even exist. So under areas, identity, and pages, I'll right-click pages and choose add new scaffolded item. On the left, I chose identity, which gives me the option of identity in the middle. And then I clicked add. So this brings up a list of all of the pages that the identity library offers that we could implement or customize. So I want the account register second last item in the list, third column, second last item. So again, I'm not going to change the UI of this page. I want to change the code that executes when the user clicks the register button. So pick account register. And under data context class, we need to pick our application DB context. So notice my add button is disabled until I choose my database. I can't add any files. So I want account register using our shared layout and our data, our application DB context. Now I can click add. So this basically takes the template version, adds it into our project so we can make changes to it. For example, maybe you want to add a JavaScript that evaluates the password strength as the user types. You could, if you want to add that, you would add the register form and you could customize it. Ivan, I imagine this was the kind of thing you were probably trying to do. You were looking for the register form so you could modify it. Is that right? So we get a text file. It gives us information here, a link. Ah, okay. Well, that's good. Curiosity is good. Serves you well as a developer. So now under my Solution Explorer, now I have under pages, I now have a folder for account, and I've got my register view is in here. So this is the view that gets loaded. We just never saw it. It was kind of hidden. So if we wanted to change any text on the register form, we could change it here. I'm not so much interested in the view. I want to change the code. Now, these, you notice it's under something called pages. So here they're not really using MVC. It's kind of, the library is separate. So I've got my register.cshtml, and there's a little arrow beside it that I can click on to expand. If I expand it, here is the C# file underneath that contains all of the code for registering a user. A lot of this code is fairly complicated. We don't want to change much of it. It's working with the identity library. So, for example, it's got the error messages around the passwords, and it's got a whole bunch of methods for registering the users. So line 71, and it should be the exact same line number in yours, it's on post async. So this is the code that happens when the user clicks the register button. So it checks if the inputs were valid, and if they are, it creates a new user with the email, and then this create async, that's then hashing the password and saving. So once these lines of code execute, our user is created in the database down in Asp Net Users. That's what's happening on lines 77 and 78. Again, exact same line numbers in all our projects because this is just scaffold code. The code below is if we are sending an email confirmation, which we're not for now. It also then, if it says if we're not requiring email confirmation, it actually logs us in. So we see our username right away. We don't have to register and then sign in separately. We register and it automatically signs us in. So before this code, if our result succeeds, we want to now add this user as a customer. So we're going to add a little bit of code here. So on line 81, automatically add new users to the customer role. We created in the DB. So we only need a couple lines of code for this. Actually, we only need one line of code. In this case, I'll create a variable called role result. And we'll use our user manager class that we're using up above. And we're going to call the method add to role, async. So we're going to take the new user and we're going to put them in the role called customer. That's it, one line of code. I'll throw this in the chat. So put this on line 81. So now if we register as a register again, not only should it create a new record in Asp Net Users, but it will then grab the new user ID from the users table and add that person into the customer role in our Asp Net user roles. Right now we have our one user is in role ID admin. Okay, interesting. This is, yeah, the register. The file is register.cshtml.cs. And the way I got to this file, once we scaffolded the register form, Visual Studio will add this account folder under pages. And under here, this is our HTML file, our register.cs.html. There's the view. There's a little arrow beside it. If I click on it, it then also gives me a .cs file. And this CS file has the code that saves a new user. Farouk, await means, right, so you were in the view, Ivan. You were in the HTML. The CS is the server-side code. Await, you'll notice, Farouk, all of these methods run asynchronously. So creating the user, it means we can start that process, but our thread is not blocked. Other code can continue to run while one process is executing. All of our code in .NET Core is asynchronous. We see that as well in our controller methods. All our methods are asynchronous, and all the calls use await and async. So run the code, but let other things happen while that code is executing. which speeds up our performance. Okay. You'll work more with that next semester when we work with Node.js. So let's go back now and register as a customer again. This time, though, we will automatically, if this code works, not only are we going to get a new login, but this login is also going to be put in the role of customer. So let's try this out. So I'm going to go back to my register page, and I'm going to sign up again as customer1 at gc.ca, test 123 $sign. So I'm going to sign up. So it created my account and logged me in. I want to see if this code we added to the register process, if it worked. So I'm going to go back to my database. First, I'll check my Asp Net Users table. And there's two records now. I've got admin and customer. And the admin user ID starts with the 4, the customer starts with the 3. So now I should have two records in Asp Net user roles. My administrator should be in role 1. My customer should be in role 2. So I'll query my user roles, and it worked as we intended. Here's our administrator in role 1. Here's our customer in role 2. If we add additional customer accounts, I'm going to create a customer 2 as well. This table should have then 2 users in role ID number 2. So I'm just going to try it one more time. I'm going to log out. And I'll register one more time, this time as customer 2. Same password. So now we've got 3 users, an administrator, 2 customers. Again, I'm going to go to the database. We registered admin, and then we ran this script. Notice it's highlighted in blue. So we took the first user we had, which was the administrator, and we manually inserted that user into the admin role. For everyone else, they automatically are registered as customers with our new line of code here. So customers can sign themselves up. Administrators can't. We don't want anyone to be able to come to the website and make themselves an administrator. Obviously, that's not safe. So if I look at my queries again, my users table, I now have 3 users: admin, customer 1, and customer 2. In my Asp Net user roles, I've also got 3 records: 1 administrator in role 1 and 2 customers in role ID 2. So we've now got the accounts and the roles that we need, but we haven't actually implemented any authorization in the website. As a customer, I can still view my categories and products links, and I can change the product catalog as a customer. because right now we've only required authentication. We've said as long as someone is logged in, they can see these links and they can change the data in the categories and product tables. Obviously, that's not a very good security model. So we want to change the security in our controllers so that we're not only checking authentication, but we're also checking authorization. Being logged in isn't enough for a user to access these things. They also need to be an administrator. So this is why we need a couple of different accounts, so we can try logging in first as an administrator and then as a customer, and we should have different behavior depending on what role we're in. So now that we've got things set up, this isn't going to take us very long to do. I think I should be able to set you free by 1 o'clock today. I know you all have been working hard on your assignments, so I don't want to beat you up with a 3-hour class today. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. First thing I want to do is change my nav bar. Because right now, anyone who logs in, regardless of their role, anyone who logs in can see these links. So I want to change my if statement in my layout so these links are only visible to admin users, not to customers. So we'll go back to our layout. And I want to change the if statement on line 28. This is checking for authentication. It's only asking, is the user logged in or anonymous? What should we change line 28 to do? Right. So we don't just want to check for authentication, we want to check the role. So instead of using .isAuthenticated, I'm going to modify this. I'm still going to use if user.identity. Whoops, sorry. In this case, we just use user.isInRole. And we have to spell it exactly the way we have it in the database. So in my database, in the roles table, I'll put the code back up. Right? I called it administrator with a capital A. So I have to use it exactly the same way. So I'll put this in the chat. So we're no longer just checking if the user's logged in. We're checking that they are in the administrator role. So I'm going to log back out. Sorry. So I've changed line 28. I'm going to log out of the site again. So as an anonymous user, I don't see those links. If I log in as a customer, previously customers could see categories and products. I am authenticated, but I'm not in the right role. So I don't see categories and products as a customer. I can, however, still browse to them. If I know the URL, I can still get here. So hiding the links is only step one. We still need to control access through the controller. So I'm going to log out. And now if I log in as an administrator, Now that I'm an administrator, I'm in the right role, so my nav bar links are visible. So we only have one more thing to do. One more line of code that we need to repeat in 2 places. What else do we still need to do so that not only are the links hidden, right? So which files specifically do we need to modify? You're right, Farouk. We need to modify, the 2 controllers. Because right now the controllers are only checking authentication. Anybody who's logged in can call the methods inside the controller. We need to add the restrictions around authorization around the roles. So we'll do it in both our categories and our product controller, and then we should be finished. So inside my categories controller, I'm going to modify my authorize statement on line 14. I'm going to add roles, and it's plural because we could allow multiple roles. We might have like an administrator and maybe like a super administrator or an owner. It's going to be roles equals administrator. And this has to exactly match the name of the role in the database. I'm going to save that. I'll put it in the chat as well. And I want to add make this same change to the product controller. That it's not just any authenticated user that can access the product controller. They also have to be in the administrator role. So I'll open my products controller and I'll change my plain authorize statement to authorize, and I'm defining administrator roles only. So if you're logged in but you're not an administrator, you can't call any of the methods here. With our exception of we did override the category details. We'll just leave that. It's okay if that one's public. So I'll update both of my controllers to restrict access to administrators only. So as an admin user, it's using a cookie, so my login persists. So I can still navigate around through categories and products because I'm logged in with an admin account. Cool. So if Liam was an administrator, he could give himself his game for 1 cent. But if I log out and log back in with either customer account, I'm still going to be blocked, right? I get access denied. Yep. Or if I try to go to products. So I am logged in, but I don't have access to that specific resource. So again, we can control access either at the entire controller level, or we may have a more sophisticated model where like every method in the controller has different access levels, in which case we could authorize each individual method to whichever list of group of users should have access to it. So we have very granular control, and all we really need are these authorize or allow anonymous commands. Yeah, the shop says access denied because our shop also goes to the categories index. We're going to change that link, right? This is where it goes. So we'll change that quickly. Yeah, that's right. And this will be the last thing we'll do. And then we'll call it a day. So we don't want this link to go to categories anymore. Categories is for administrators to manage the site. So we'll just make a new empty controller, and then we'll change this link. We don't really need to redirect. We're going to modify the link. We do want a public link so users can shop. And typically users can shop anonymously. They aren't going to have to log in until they come to checkout. Because most online stores don't make you log in just to browse around and put things in your cart. They only make you register when it comes to time to check out. So that's how our store will work. So I'm going to make a new controller. We'll call it shop, and then we'll change this link. So this is going to be public. We're basically done with the authentication for today. So we're almost done. Bear with me for a few more minutes. So in our controllers, let's right click and choose add a controller. And this is just going to be an empty controller. We're going to build this manually for the shopping experience because this isn't really doing create, read, update, and delete in our database. We're going to have to make kind of custom methods here. So I'm going to pick an empty controller. It's an empty controller class, and we'll just call it shop controller. So the URL will be localhost/shop, which is a kind of descriptive URL for our customers. So you can see the options, just making an empty controller, call it shop controller. So the scaffolding isn't really going to give us the pages we need for this. So we'll make a shop controller. In here, it's got an index view. And we're going to add a couple of things. We want to add a database connection. And on our main index page of the shop, when the user clicks shop now, we want to show them a list of categories. But we don't want it to look like the admin version. We don't want it to look like a HTML table. It's not very, it's fine for managing the data. It's not really a great shopping experience to show the user an HTML table, right? We don't want the main shop page we don't want it to look like this. We want it to look better. So I created an empty controller. I'm going to need to reference the models, the data library. So we want to connect to the DB whenever this controller is used. Because this is an empty controller, we have to do this manually. In our scaffolded controllers, it's already here. So I guess we can just do it this way. So then we can use our context to go and fetch the list of categories and display them. So in here, we're going to get a list of categories. And we'll display them in alphabetical order. So we're going to write a query that fetches our categories in alphabetical order. So this is the code inside the index method. So now we just need to build a view that will display the list of categories to our shoppers in an attractive way. And then we'll stop for today. I know I said I'd have you done by 1. I need just a few more minutes. Okay, so there's our controller. It connects to the database. And in the index method, we're going to grab our category list from the database, and we want to pass it to the view. So when someone starts shopping, they can click on a category they're interested in. So we need to build our shop index view and then change the link in our nav bar. So Liam, you had mentioned this link. I'm just going to go back to layout. And on my line 26 that says shop now, I'm going to change the controller from categories to shop. So that link will now call our new controller. The categories controller is for administrators only now, for managing the site. So now we just need to build this index method. If I try this right now, I'm going to get an error saying there is no view. So I modified line 26. I'll log out of the site. So now I'm just a regular shopper. I click shop now. And I should get an error saying there is no shop index. So we're going to change that. We need a page that can called index that will display the list of categories that we are getting here. So inside of views, I need to make a new subfolder called shop. I'm going to add a new folder called shop. And in here, I'm going to add a new view. So again, that was inside of views. I right-clicked, add, new folder, which I called shop. And now I'm going to create an index view here. So I'm going to right-click my new shop folder. I'm going to add a view. I'll pick Razor View because it'll save me a little bit of coding. And I'll click Add. So again, you can see the tree under Views and Shop. I'm going to choose a Razor View. I'm going to call the name Index. My template is going to be a list. We're going to reformat the list because it's going to build it as an HTML table. We're going to use a Bootstrap card view. And our model is our application DB context. And then I'll add this. So this is going to give us a page that displays the list of categories. it's going to be an exact kind of duplicate of the categories index. Well, that's interesting. Oh, whoops. Where is my... Sorry, my model class, I'm sorry, should be category. Picked the wrong option in model class. View name is index, template is list, model class is category, and our data context and layout are the same as always. So I had failed to pick the category model. We want a list of categories. And then we're just, so this gives us a page called index with an HTML table that displays a list of categories. If I refresh, my shop link, it's going to load a list of categories in a table. Looks exactly like the admin page. So what I'm going to do is just change the HTML and I'll just put it in the chat. We don't want a table. We don't want edit details, delete, and create new. And we don't want it to say index. So I'm just going to change the heading that says shop our store. I'll change the H1 to say choose any category. And I've got some HTML here. I'll just paste in the chat. I'm going to take everything else out from line 10 down. I'm going to delete it all. And I'm going to replace it this way. So here's the HTML instead. I'll put it in the chat, and I think we're done. So I'm going to use a Bootstrap card view. I'm getting rid of the links to create, edit, and delete. I'll try it one more time, and we should get a friendlier, better looking shopping page. Not beautiful, but better than this. So now our categories are ordered alphabetically and they're in this card view. We no longer have edit, create, or delete. Okay, you are maybe missing the model then on line 1, possibly. You're either missing the model on line 1, or else your controller, you have to make sure you have this query and your controller is passing the query data to the view. Okay, so if you have the model, then the issue I think is in the controller. And I've put all the code in the chat. I'm going to push everything to GitHub now anyway. Okay, because without the query, your model will be empty. Right. If you don't pass the data and your view expects a model, when you try to loop through the model will be empty, which will give you an error. It means you're trying to reference an object that's null. So if you don't pass the data, this model object is null. You can't loop through an object that's empty. It doesn't exist. All right, it's after 1. We are going to stop for today. I will upload everything to GitHub, and I'll upload the videos to YouTube when WebEx finishes converting them to MP4. It's 1:09. I'm going to take a short break here. I will come back. I do have a meeting starting at 2 o'clock, but I will come back into the room for maybe 15 or 20 minutes starting at 1:20 if people need some debugging help with today's lesson. Other than that, we'll pause for today. There's no homework for today. I'll give out assignment 2 next week, and we'll also look at adding social authentication into our application. Okay, so have a good week, and I will see all of you next week. I will be back in the room in about 10 minutes.